writing is a form of writing that reports on matters pertaining to sporting topics and sports competition. For the history of sports journalism, it started in the early 1800s when it was targeted to the social elite and transitioned into an integral part of the news business, with newspaper having its particular section to it. And there are many different forms of sports journalism, ranging from play-by-play, game recaps, to analysis and investigative journalism on the important developments about or in the particular sports. Now, here are the 4 creative essentials for the better sports writing. First is find the human interest angle. This is the most important element of writing a creative piece about sports. Instead of the athletes' statistics, the fans tend to know or wanted to know more about what obstacles did the athlete overcome, what sacrifices had to be done, how does an athlete feel when he or she loses, or what thoughts are going through an athlete's mind when he or she makes the last push through the finish line. You can also write about the roar of the crowd, about how it affects the athlete's performance, or the silence and the sadness that accompanies a stunning loss. Because by capturing the personal impact of sports, whether it's from the athlete's point of view or that from the dedicated fans, you'll make your writing memorable. The next writing essential is know your sport specs. So just like any other sports writer, sports scout, you need to do your research. Because if you try to write about a sport without having any knowledge of the rules of play, your piece will seem inauthentic because you don't know what the term means. Let's say, for example, you're a huge fan of basketball, and let's say the Cleveland Cavaliers in particular. You need to do your research about their team. You could learn about the history of the Cavaliers, the coaches, the players, the competition, and the business around them. Then after that, let your passion and your research inspire your writing. The third one is make the call right in your voice. So often, sports writing has a journalistic tone. From the highlights and team standings, maybe a few points of personal opinion, and the expectations for the upcoming events. So if you're going to write a sports-centric creative piece, you'll want to stand out from the competition. By writing in your voice, in your own voice rather, you'll bring something unique to your manuscript. After all, no one else can see the tennis match from your perspective, whether you're the one playing on the court or you're just one of the fans watching in the stands. And lastly is practice, practice, and practice. So just like an athlete, they train every day to improve, whether he feels like it or not, even when she'd rather give up. It's the same for writers who want to succeed and get their work published. You need to write and rewrite, to edit and proofread, join a writing group, attend a conference, and maybe even find a writing mentor. And just like an athlete who doesn't like losing, they continue to practice and aim for the prize. And as for the writers, don't let rejection letters stop you from sending out your next submission. Because by polishing your writing skills and regularly sending out your submissions to the right market, you'll improve your odds of creating a winning piece that literary editors and agents will be interested in. So to sum it all up, there are 4 creative essentials in for better sports writing. These are find the human interest angle, which is the most important. That you would write about the affective traits of the athlete rather than the athlete's statistics. The second one is know your sports specs. This is about doing your research on a particular sports. The third one is make a call, write in your voice. And the last one is to practice and practice and practice to improve your writing.
So we are done talking about the essentials of sports writing. So now let's move on to sports news versus sports features. In writing sports news, there are elements that we have to consider. Sports news typically covers basic information such as highlights of the game, the names of the teams involved, the type of sport, score or final outcome, when and where the game was played. But in order to write a good sports article, remember to focus on what an athlete does, because sports revolved around the drama of competition. Spotlighting a single person gives your story a human side that your readers can relate to. Okay, so there are 5 types of sports news. The following are the 5 most common types. First, straight lead game, the most basic form of all sports writing. Game story is an article using a straight news format. The article summarizes the main points of a game, which team won or lose, the final score, and what a player did. Second, feature game. The feature game is a favorite tool for professional sports writers because it gives fans and readers a different angle from the highlights they have seen on TV. Third, profiles. Whereas a feature game spotlights a game, a profile features an individual character. This person might be a rookie athlete rising in the ranks, or perhaps an influential coach. Fourth, season preview and wrap-up. Every sports writer needs season previews and wrap-up stories in their collection. These stories are published while the coaches and their teams are preparing for the upcoming season, or after the season has ended, whether in victory or in defeat. Fifth, columns. A sports writing column is the place where a sports writer shares their opinion. Sometimes these columns may include venting when a team, player, or coach doesn't meet expectations. Other times, they may write about what they admire in a team, player, or even the coach. Alright, so let's proceed to sports features. Sports features presents information, news, and analysis of sporting events and the personalities who make these events happen. For example, a sports feature could deal with a test match between India and Pakistan, World Cup football, Wimbledon, Sanal Gavaskar, or Steffi Graf, and a trivia about a game or a personality. The sports feature is an essential aspect of sports coverage, meant to complement and add human interest and meaning to a day-to-day coverage of sport events. Why do we need to know the common features of sports? What do you think? Okay, apparently, sports can provide basis for a lifelong participation in a regular exercise and the development of mental and moral qualities. It includes team spirit, sportsmanship, self-discipline, cooperation, commitment, and competing within a framework of agreed rules. That's why we need an engagement to this.
Good day, everyone. So my assigned topic is to discuss about the principles of journalism applicable to sports writing. There are 10 important things to consider when it comes in writing journalism that are applicable to sports writing. So first, we have public function and right to sports information. So it means sport journalists should report on all areas of sports. As an essential part of their public service approach, they should not only concentrate on mainstream discipline but also give exposure to underrepresented sports that generate news and have a large number of practitioners. This can help to broaden the coverage and expand citizens' sports culture. Media professionals should not report on the private lives of sports people unless the information is relevant to understanding the athlete's performance. Number 2. Conflict of interest. Sports journalists should avoid taking part in activities that lies outside of their professional realm or employment that may create conflict of interest. This includes working in the field of public relations and as advisors for sports persons. Editors and reporters cannot be sources who are assigned to themselves. Behaving professionally entails remaining loyal to the news organization for which one works. Number 3. Hospitality from sources and independence. Sports journalists should reject invitations and gifts from teams or promoters that could call them into questions and instrumentalize them as reporters acting as independent eyewitnesses. Likewise, they should not use their position as journalists to obtain free tickets for any sports event from sources other than those which customarily makes passes or tickets available when a performance has a clear bearing on the journalist's jobs. Number 4. News gathering and impartiality. Sports journalists should avoid developing a close relationship with sports sources and maintain a critical distance by seeking and using a varied and representative numbers of arguments and facts on any issues, and presenting them appropriately without bias towards their audiences. They should also avoid misconduct such as boosterism and nationalistic or chauvinistic approaches. Impartiality entails being professional rather than behaving like a fans. Number 6. Journalistic quality and the use of language. Sports journalists are committed to journalistic quality and must therefore rely on a correct use of language as their main working tool by which to enhance their stories. Acquiring a vast vocabulary and developing the ability to use suitable words and phrases in referring to any sports person are valuable assets towards improving content quality within the field. Factual reporting. Sports journalists are committed to truthful and factual reporting. They should establish a clear distinction between facts and personal opinions about them, as well as between news and advertising or sponsored content. Reinforcing methods of verification is essential to fight against fake news, the pervasiveness of speculation and rumors in sports content, and to discarding sensationalism and trivialization in news reporting. Number 7. Promotion of positive sport values. Sports journalists should contribute to the promotion of positive values such as fair play and discrimination and international peace and understandings through their coverage of sports events among citizens, with special attentions for youth and children. Number 8. Violence in sports. Sports journalists must avoid using warlike language as well as disseminating expressions and images that emphasizes or legitimate any forms of violence towards individuals or groups of people within or outside sport venues. Sport is not a substitute for war. Thus, journalists must minimize confrontational of narratives and warlike imagery. Number 9. Gender perspective. To counteract the long-standing underrepresentation of sportswomen, sports journalists should work with greater dedication to promote equality in the reporting by giving female athletes more exposure when the result deserves it. More women should be incorporated as expert sources into the news agenda. Sexist comments and stereotypes should be avoided when referring to them. Number 10. Sports beyond sports. Sports journalists should go beyond the dramatic action in the field and raise public awareness about relevant contexts that exist behind the play. Sports should be thoroughly explained from their social, financial, cultural, and political dimension. That is all for my part, and thank you for listening. I hope you learned something from my report, and thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
Hi, this is Jessica, and in this video, let's gonna talk about the jargons in different sports events. But wait, are you familiar of what jargon is? Actually, there are different jargons in every field. Like there are jargons in medical field, in education, in laws, in businesses, etc. And so in sports. So any group can have a jargon. To further understand, let us first know what is jargon. So jargons, these are specialized terminologies associated with a particular field or area of activity. So it is normally employed in a particular communicative context and may not be well understood outside of that context. To put it simply, these are special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or a group and are difficult for others to understand. Now, let's focus on the jargons of different sports events. So, the world of sports have a weird and wonderful vocabulary of their own. Its terminology is fascinating one because there are terms that are self-explanatory, there are terms that have pretty obvious or intuitive origins, and there are also terms that are just plain weird. So let's discuss and clarify some of the funkiest and most famous phrases in the world of sports. So let's have first the jargon that can be heard or used in a baseball game. So first we have can of corn. So this phrase refers to an easy to catch ball hit high into the outfield. So there are two possible explanations for this phrase. So the first is that 19th century grocers would knock down cans from the highest shelves with a hook for an easy catch in their aprons. The other is that corn was the best-selling vegetable dough stock on the lower shelves and thus the easiest canned good to catch. Number 2, we have catbird seat. So this is an ideal situation for a batter during which the bases are loaded and there are no strikes nor outs to the batting side's name. So a catbird seeks out the highest point in a tree to sing, and the batter can likewise be seen to be on top of the world in these situations. Now let's proceed on the jargons of a football game. So we have Hail Mary. So the most iconic play in American football is when a desperate quarterback throws the ball deep into the end zone in hopes of a game-changing touchdown late in the game. So actually, Roger Staubach of the Dallas Cowboys popularized the name in 1975. So after a game-winning touchdown against the Minnesota Vikings, he said, he closed his eyes down and said, Hail Mary. So when a football team is out of the options at the end of the half or game, so their quarterback will throw a 60-yard prayer to the end zone. So the play has an extremely low success rate, less than 5%. Actually, businesses also have adopted Hail Mary as a term to define a last resort tactic for salvaging a situation. So the term entered modern lingo in 1975 after a Vikings-Cowboys game. So currently, Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers has been dubbed the king of the Hail Mary for his success rate with a long shot pass. Number 4, we have bump and run. So a defensive technique used by defensive backs who are trying to slow down receivers at the line of scrimmage. So it's designed to initiate contact with the receiver in order to throw him off of his intended running route. So this phrase, bump and run, is also a car theft technique where one robber draws a driver from the car so that an accomplice can drive off with it. So next, number 5, coffin corner. So in football, a coffin corner punt is one that goes out of the bounds right at the goal line, finding the other team deep in their own territory. So it's extremely hard to execute but can be beautiful when done correctly. So, the next one, proceed today, jargons used and can be heard in a basketball game. So number 6, we have tossing up bricks. So shooting the ball in such a manner that it clangs hard off the backboard. So it is usually used as an insult to someone who is shooting poorly or has an unpleasant shooting motion. If a basketball player is continuing to miss shots, then he or she can be said to have laid enough bricks to build a house. Number 7, we have also the phrase, the charity stripe. So legendary sportscaster Chick Hearn coined the phrase, the charity stripe, to denote the free throw line in basketball. So when players step up to the free throw line, there is no one from the opposing team actively trying to stop them from scoring. Hence, it is deemed that they are given a charitable opportunity to score the basketball. Number 8, we also have the phrase alley-oop. So the term alley-oop seems a bit random, right? So it turns out its origin is in the phrase Alice hop from French, which was what a circus acrobat would yell before attempting a leap so that everyone else would clear out of the way. So this is now the second thing France has contributed to modern life after Bordeaux's wine, of course. So it was popularized in the 1950s in the practices by players like Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, who would apparently judge a teammate's shot trajectory to be missing the hop and instead jump in the air, catch their errant shot, and slam it down. Number 9, we have also the phrase slam dunk. So slam dunk was popularized in the mid-1970s in NBA as an electrifying way to score points. So it has arguably evolved into sports' most celebrated play. So at the office, slam dunks can refer to just about any guaranteed success, ideas, execution, or a new hire. Number 10, drop a dime. So in basketball, the phrase drop a dime refers to a beautiful assist. So its origin derives from the olden days where payphones were the only way to call someone quickly when you were away from your home or office phone. So in the era of mobster crime, police forces had to depend heavily on informants or undercover agents to report on impending criminal activity. So this was especially helpful for coordinating sting operations or catching the criminals red-handed. At that time, payphone calls cost 10 cents or a dime. So when an informant would drop a dime in the coin slot and pay for a covert phone call to clue the police in on some shady shit. The informant was giving a big assist to the cops. So the connection is a bit loose, but this is indeed how the phrase drop a dime came to describe noteworthy assist in basketball. So next, we have also the jargons that can be heard or used in a hockey game. So first, for number 11, we have the word butterfly. So a goaltending technique where the goalie falls to his or her knees with legs splayed out and arms wide. So like the wings of its insect namesake. So this allowed the goalie to maximize coverage of the net and to stop the puck with any part of the body. So it was actually, or this word is actually pioneered by Glenn Hall, who played 14 nerve-wracking NHL seasons before finally putting on a goalie mask. Number 12, we have also the phrase Gordie Howe hat trick. So this phrase is named after one of the all-time great hockey players, Gordie Howe, who won 4 Stanley Cup championships and 6 Hart trophies as MVP. So Howe was known to be as tough as he was talented fittingly. So this feat involves scoring a goal, notching an assist, and getting into a fight, all in the same game. So a hat trick is when a player accomplishes some sort of feat 3 times in a single sporting event. Examples include 3 goals in a soccer or hockey game, 3 bullseyes in a row in darts, or 3 wickets on 3 consecutive balls in cricket. So the origin of this term is said to come from the cricket in 1858 HH. So Stephenson, an English bowler, took the first recorded hat trick in cricket history, dismissing 3 batters in consecutive deliveries. So the fans were so shocked by this display of brilliance that they organized a collection of donations to go to Stephenson after the match. And then lastly, we have the jargon that can be heard or used in a soccer game. Number 13, for the parking the bus. So the phrase, or this is when a team sets up all of its players in a defensive positions in front of goal. Thus, it is almost impossible for the opposition to score as the defenders take up so much space that it is as if they were a bus taking up parking spots. Number 14, getting booked. So when a player receives either a yellow or red card for a particular bad infraction, so the former is a warning that can lead to a sending off. So the latter is an immediate sending off. So the referee then notes the foul down in his or her notebook, hence the phrase. The last one is we have the word, or the coin word, nutmeg. So in soccer, one of the most embarrassing things as an offensive player can subject a defender to is the nutmeg, or similar to posterizing someone or breaking their ankles with a crossover in basketball. So it happens when the player with the ball uses his technical skills to slot the ball through the defender's leg and run past him. So it often ends with the defender in a figurative or literal paddle on the ground, and it's amazing to watch. So the term comes from the 1870s, where nutmeg exports were soaring between America and England. So this coined the term getting nutmegged, which was Victorian slang for a foolish victim being deceived by a clever trickster. So as the practice of slipping the ball between a player's legs became more popular as a showy display of skill in the late 1800s, so the phrase getting nutmegged began find application in soccer as well. So interestingly enough, there is a form of street soccer often played 2 by 2 or 1 by 1 called pana, where you can score normal goals by kicking the ball into the small goal, but you can catch the proverbial goal snitch and at the match early as an automatic win by nutmegging a player of the opposite team. So The aforementioned are just few of the most famous jargons in different sports events. So that would be all for my topic. So I hope you have learned a thing or two. Thank you and have a nice day.
Alright, so let's proceed to the sports coverage. So the sports coverage is an important form of content for all media outlets. Sport journalism has grown as a distinct profession in the media from the mid-19th century onwards. First, through a dedicated sporting press, and then established as a key form of sports news on the back pages of popular press. The rise of television and commercialization in sports, and also digital technologies. Early sport journalism was characterized by a focus on fixtures and results which service a strong gambling culture. In the early to mid-20th century, a more professionalized golden age of sports journalism developed, often characterized as cheerleaders with typewriters or part of the toy department of national and regional newspapers. Nevertheless, new forms of sports writing emerged, much of which delivered news and gossip to a mass audience. The rise of television and commercialization in sport transformed both the sports industry and the nature of sports coverage. This has itself been disrupted by digital technologies and network media sport. Understanding the mass communication without attention to sport coverage is practically impossible. Through the mass media, millions and billions of viewers, listeners, and readers are brought into the experience of a great sports performance. Nowadays, media coverage of sports is widespread. We improve our knowledge and understanding by listening to commentators, pundits, and watching replays. More people participate in sports coverage by the media than those that are not covered. TV coverage takes many forms: the entertainment, the live programs, and also the highlights. So that's all the report of Group 5 about sports writing. I hope you learned something from today's discussion and thank you for listening.